Welcome back to episode 8 of the Split Screen Experience. I'm joined again by my ever-talented co-host,
Harmon. Today, we got a pretty good episode lined up for all of you listeners out there. First, I'm sure, if you've been any part of the gaming community for the past 21 years, then I'm sure you've heard of Rooster Teeth. And unfortunately, after 21 years of providing the community with entertainment and other forms of laughter, they are shutting down.
Yes, this was an unfortunate, again, like Bernie said on his podcast, Morning Somewhere, his new one with Ashley, he stated that it was an unfortunate announcement, but most people didn't find it surprising because we've all seen the downhill trend for the last probably 5 or so years at the very least of declining returns on views for videos and whatnot. The company has shifted a lot of personality around, which is within their right to do so, but it's definitely not an unforeseen event, but it definitely is heartbreaking for sure.
Yeah, I didn't really was not the biggest in them until probably about 7-8 years ago now. That's when I started like, oh, hey, I forgot you guys. And I'm like, oh my god, this is great. I love everything they're doing. I love like their mini series, their animated series, mainly Red versus Blue.
Always iconic.
The Halo series that they did is great. For when they first started it, it was just them sitting on a couch, moving their characters' heads up and down to simulate speaking.
And it quickly took off into its own branding of content to where it's, something that transcended the internet to physical media and gaining approval from Microsoft. I mean, honestly, I would contribute a lot of Halo like growing success during that era. Probably a good amount of it was coming from them furthering that, like, people who've never checked it out to go, this seems kind of fun. I wonder what the actual game behind this is about, and drew people in.
Oh yeah, and then they've also had like very comforting people, like people that you could almost relate to, just playing. They're just a group of guys and girls playing video games, having laughs. It was great.
Yeah, it was something that like you had to be there to believe it, that kind of thing. I'm hoping in all of this, well, let me go ahead and finish my first thought, I guess there. It was like a parasocial relationship, but like not like a super unhealthy one for most people, I feel anyway. It felt like Achievement Hunter, that being, their main gaming brand. I felt like I could connect to them, even though they were in a different like demographic than me by age, region, life experience, whatever, when I started watching. But it felt like we all kind of found a friend in Gavin, or wanted to, get mad at, Michael, or hear Michael get mad at someone, that kind of thing. You felt included in a sense of community with them due to the strength of their personalities. And I really do hope, let me get this on the record now, I do hope the best for all involved. I do hope the best for all involved, that they are able to find, new work that recognizes their talent. And while we mourn the past of their work, hopefully the future is a brighter one.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can still see them, whether that be they move to streaming on Twitch or doing something else. Maybe they form like a smaller company and still hang out and do stuff. As I don't want that to be the end for a lot of those guys.
I definitely would like to see that, because to me, I'm sure that there's been probably some degree of talk about like, could they, like within themselves, could we do this again? Could we, from the rubble, kind of pick apart some of the pieces back together and try to get going again? Because this really wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for them getting bought out. That's the heart of the subject matter, is Warner Discovery is closing their doors after a couple of years of them being non-profitable, but without that much overhead of that industry, I feel like they would have been profitable enough to they would have maybe had some downsizing, which again is still unfortunate for the employees caught in that crossfire, but the legacy and brand itself could live on and maybe make a recovery. So maybe they'll see that with, the lack of an overhead, they will be able to kind of salvage some of these parts, because they're all based in that area anyway. You might as well at least give it a shot, invest some time into a new brand.
Right. When I watch Rooster Teeth, or I guess it'd be more Achievement Hunter. Achievement Hunter was my favorite sub-brand of them. I not only their gaming videos, but like their in-between games were some of the best videos I've
Yes.
ever watched. Whether it's
Yeah, between the games, shenanigans, all that.
watching them throw uh, these hard but bouncy balls at each other, or watching one of the guys named Jeremy axe kick one of his coworkers' desk because of a bet that it wouldn't break. They definitely had content for everyone and were willing to do stuff that may be a bit costly to them.
Yeah. No, they definitely took advantage of their ability to, financially, they're able to throw money at projects. They were able to greenlight a lot of creative projects. I know that like during his time at the company, like Chris Damaris became much more than he started out as. He became like a writer and a producer and, showrunner, that kind of deal. And so like that was the real essence of that brand for me, is the fact that they continued to want to take risks. Um, because that's what they were built on. The idea of, originally they're making this little show for themselves, and then they decided to put it on the internet, and that there was it wasn't much of a risk, but it paid off. And so everything about their identity after that was, I think this could be good, let's do that, which might have been the thing that cost them in the end. Maybe some risks just didn't pay off.
Yeah, since Warner said that they hadn't made a profit in like years, I wonder what started to go wrong that they just stopped seeing revenue gain.
Yeah, because to me, again, I don't want to talk about layoffs like it's a good thing. Let me put that out there now. They're always unfortunate. It sucks for the people who obviously lose their jobs. It sucks for the people who are friends with people losing their jobs, but they aren't. There's a little bit of like a almost survivor guilt in that scenario, where the axe just barely missed you. But maybe that was the move. Maybe, because they were on that whole conquest path of buying up other brands for a good handful of years in like the mid 2010s, because I mean they brought up brands like Funhouse, they brought up Cow Chop, Kind of Funny, and there's others there I believe, but those were like their big ones because I loved Funhouse through and through. That was a really fun addition for them, but maybe that wasn't the right move growing that much, because I mean that was what I finally got to the source of that, at least from what I could tell from the internet. Why, like the reason behind why they were bought out in the first place was because they wanted to grow quicker and better compete with these major brands like Netflix and HBO, which sounds kind of insane when you look at that, because as much as I love Red versus Blue or Ruby or anything of their other, their Achievement Hunter branding, all that, none of that is in the same space or level as HBO, Netflix, or these major titans of entertainment and media.
Yeah, it was a shame they were finally closing their doors, but I still think there's at least a couple that I know that I'll still tune into some of their streams and some of their old former employees that I still watch on Twitch. So I'm sure
Sure.
this isn't the last we see of them.
No, and I hope it's not. It's an unfortunate. I know they still have technically like close to like 50 something days. They had 60 days as of like a week ago. So it should be around 53 or so days to like kind of close everything out. They're going to do some sort of goodbye deal to properly send it off, but I have to say I don't know if there is a proper send off. When the manner of them closing is this. It's not they're decided, like the founders like we're done. Most of the people we brought up are done. We're just going to go ahead and like wind things down on our terms and then leave that chapter closed. It's the book's getting thrown away, and they don't even have a hand on a page. So it's just an unfortunate scenario where a lot of these young talent, this is all they've known. Again, Barb came there straight out of college and has been a great personality character for them for years. I mean, she's always fun to have on the podcast, even when she's telling some, admittedly terrible pun or whatnot. She's great. And like a lot of like RT moments for me wouldn't be the same without someone like her. So who knows? I hope all those talented people are able to find something else to move on to quickly.
Yeah, me too. But speaking of other things, some recent news. Some games we play have started new seasons or have added new things. Start off with Rainbow Six Siege.
Loving it. The new season feels really good so far, for me at least.
You got a new hero. Not hero, yeah. You got a new operator called Deimos. who can track the enemy team. And while he can see them, the opponent that he's tracking can also see Deimos. So it becomes this kind of game of cat and mouse. Like who's gonna take the bait? Because what I've seen so far is people have been using it to like they've had another buddy sit with them, and then when either Deimos or the guy he's tracking around the corner, there's an additional person ready to shoot them.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to play. Well, I've had a chance to play him, but I haven't taken it. We were playing with one of our buddies yesterday who was really into him, so I was letting him try him out for the most part. I was more interested in the shield rework because Monty is now hyper lethal, and he feels super fun to bonk people onto the ground and hit them again, they die, or you bonk them to the ground, then unload a mag and they're gone.
I haven't gotten a chance to mess around with the shields yet, so
Yeah, that's fun.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I highly recommend next time we play, you should give it a whirl with one of them. And there's that. They added the proper iron sights, which I'm a big fan of. They also add that horizontal grip, I think is what it's called, which should just increase your movement speed. I think it knocks you up one notch. So if you go from like a 2-speed to a 3-speed, 3-speed becomes a 4-speed. That kind of deal. Which, on people who are 3-speeds, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how fast they can go with that boost, because we've never seen a proper, 4-speed like that.
Right, and then most notably, because everyone's been complaining about it, or at least a good portion of people have been complaining about it. The 1.5 scope has been removed,
which I'm pretty happy with.
Oh, so am I, because last season and the season before, it felt like, all right, just play someone that has a 1.5 ACOG sight, and that's the meta. There wasn't any team base. Right. It was all, if you have a 1.5, you're meta. If you don't, then you're not.
Which was always like a lazy way of them doing balancing, in terms of like the idea being, okay, this guy's doing too good. How do we adjust this? We'll take his sight away, which I mean they still technically did, because they said everyone was going to get almost everyone was going to get an ACOG, or not ACOG, 2 times or whatever sight they said they're giving back, I forget. And then they immediately retracted it with people like Thorn in mind, which I don't know why certain people, it's just like that's their only way that they can think to balance the game. It's a very strange mentality.
My whole thing is just give everyone the same sight, and people probably should start playing tactical again.
Because to me, I think the answer would be, yeah, give everyone the same attachment, like you said. That should not be the thing that's adjusting. And I already don't like the idea of you picking an op exclusively for their weapon. I feel like that's not a good look for the game. I've always said it's much more engaging for you to pick an op based off their ability, their gadget, their whatever. So for it to be another level of that, where it's like, oh, this guy doesn't have a 1.5, not picking that version, we'll pick this one. Because even 2 defenders with the same gun might not have the same sights, meaning you pick the one that has it. So it's a really interesting decision. Because if the argument is they're worried about spawn peaks and that kind of thing, which those scopes tend to kind of lead to people getting some pretty devious angles and, sight lines. But to me, I would just rather you turn on the attacker safeguard like you have in quick play, and, kind of nullify spawn peeking like that, or at least for like the first couple seconds in the round. Because after that, then it's not really, if you're getting spawn peeked further than like 10 seconds into the round, you kind of deserve it. So,
right.
Because I think that's all it is. It's them trying to counteract people who are playing in a super like aggressive defense behavior, which like you could give that, and defenders still have the advantage. Like, even when you can up offense a lot, but defense naturally has an advantage when it comes to the fact that they hold the site first. They have all these like entry denial, they have slowdown and whatnot. Versus attackers, it's the whole thing just to be able to break in. So to me, if it's the defense playing too aggressive and that's causing a problem, then yeah, the safeguard thing would probably deal with that. But we'll see.
And so we will. Another game that saw something new added to it, Dead by Daylight. We saw a new killer being added. I'm not the biggest one to play killer. I mainly just play survivor, so I haven't really got to see him much. What do you think?
As a person who's invested, a resident expert here, I've invested a good amount of time into both sides, and I was playing a couple games last night against bots just to kind of test his new ability. The new character's ability is basically a glorified grenade launcher that needs to bounce once before it hits its target. And once it bounces the first time, you apply a status effect that doesn't do anything except make it to where when you hit them with it again, it will damage them. The survivors can counter this by looking at the killer for 10 seconds, but the time between you shooting the first time and shooting the second time is you have a cooldown of 7 seconds, which so if they're looking at you the entire time, you have a 3 second window. To pull out the launcher takes 1 second, meaning you have a 2 second window to lob and hit them to be able to do damage when you could have just hit them by then, typically. He's a killer that I think without any major adjustments, you're going to see very little people play him in the long term, but the ones who do play him are going to be very terrifying in terms of they've mastered the mechanics, they've learned the angles, they know what lines of sight work, where the survivors play around walls they can't see because their launcher can hit them through walls technically if they're close enough to them. So yeah, it'll be it's still fairly new. Obviously, he just came out yesterday, but nonetheless, it's an interesting addition. Plus, we got a new map, which is very cool. It's like a hybrid park and movie theater with an arcade in it, where there's a cool pallet where if you slam the pallet down, it makes one of the arcade machines start spitting out tokens, which I thought was neat.
That was pretty cool. I haven't had a chance to play the new map yet. I've always been getting the old maps when I've played.
Yeah, the thing that was confusing me about, because I was trying to look for an offering to send us there and I couldn't find one, and it turns out it's because it's in the same realm as oh shoot, what's it called? It's the Dredge map, Garden of Joy.
Oh.
It's in that realm, technically. It's just one of the other maps. So one offering sending you to two. Which they haven't done that in a while. They've been trying to keep each map in its own realm for like a good couple updates. I understand DLC ones naturally are going to kind of be in their own space, like the Nostromo wreckage from Alien. Even though to me you could have put that with the Toba landing Alien map, but I guess because it's a licensing thing, they probably just don't want to deal with it. They'll keep them all separate in case they have a repeat of the Stranger Things licensing nightmare.
That was a pain because you didn't have the Demogorgon, Steve and Nancy, then you just didn't have it. And then it wasn't until like late last year that they like got it back.
Yeah, because I always said having any content like that, like cosmetic stuff, obviously I'm not talking about, but true gameplay elements, anything like that being locked behind a timed window will be a horrible idea, because I always say, like, if for whatever reason the meta shifted a lot, it's very unlikely. I'm not saying this is happening, would ever happen, but it could. Demogorgon could become the strongest killer, and if he had not come back to the game, only the people who had Demogorgon would have the strongest advantage. You wouldn't be able to just throw money at the game to be able to get him, unless you bought like some old key or code for an overcharged amount. Which to all the people who did that right after the license went away, I feel bad for you. You kind of got played, but hopefully we'll never see that happen again. That was supposedly a one-time thing where Netflix had altered the contract and Behavior didn't understand that there was a certain loophole that would let them withdraw from the contract at any time, basically without notice.
You would think that they would pay more attention to something like that.
Because, I mean, you have a lot of licenses at this point. I mean, the first one being Michael Myers. Obviously, we don't have the cool Freddy Krueger. We have the unfortunate remake one, which I hate. But, Wes Craven's estate doesn't license things, at least not for a reasonable amount of money, which I'm not sure exactly who operates his estate. But whoever that is, I'll flip you the bird. You're kind of a pain in my ass. And then obviously more recently we got, my boy Alan Wake came over. And for any one of those pieces of content, if some fallout happened where they just didn't exist anymore, that would feel bad, because that's time and development that was squandered on something that could be withdrawn maybe someday. But yeah, hopefully we don't see it. I'm just kind of filling everyone in. I know not everyone's up to the DBD news or even knows what Dead by Daylight is, but that's kind of the state of affairs.
And then the last recent game that we played that had a major update was Fortnite with its launch of the new season.
Yeah, it did happen, didn't it?
You don't sound too enthusiastic about it.
I have mixed feelings about the season. I'm definitely glad that they're not just relying super heavily on like third party IPs for for the battle pass and stuff. Obviously, like the bonus skin is Korra from Avatar. The main skin line is all created versions of Greek gods. Most of them aren't great. There's a couple variants that I think are cool. I have the battle pass just because I had bought Crew last season, which the last season relied on the idea of going, what if Peter Griffin was in Fortnite? Which like is funny, but like I've always said I would rather you guys come up with your own stuff for the battle pass and then sell these other skins. But in terms of the actual gameplay, it's I don't know, it feels really weird this season where situationally the new items can you're just there's nothing you can do. Whereas I know before you can get put in a position where, there's nothing you can do. But this feels much worse. Like if you have every weapon is low on ammo or like out of ammo, you need to reload, whatever it is. If someone has the new Zeus Thunderbolt, they're going to drop you because you don't have time. Even though it leaves them vulnerable while you're charging it, if you don't have something that can quickly reload, you're not going to be able to kill them before they just bomb you with like 200 damage of electricity. That goes through structures, might I add, if you're in build mode, that is.
Yeah, that's the lightning has sucked. I've been on the receiving end of it way too many times.
And not to mention, the only way to find the lightning bolt or like the Icarus wings, anything like that, the only way to reliably find them is to go to the 2 new areas on the map. Technically, there's 4, but it's really there's only 2 main ideas. There's Olympus and then there's the underworld. So you really need to go there, which is drawing a lot of the lobby to 2 major points. Meaning, if you survive the initial battles, you'll probably make it to final circle. But odds are you're going to get dropped because there's just too many people landing in these spots. And if you don't have these items, you feel, for the most part, like you're at a little bit of a disadvantage because you don't have that in your back pocket should things turn sideways.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of when they only do mythics, or mythics play a huge part in who wins.
Yeah, I think Mythic should be much more on the idea of like fun utility, or like an adjacent option to a thing, not just a stronger alternative kind of deal. Like I liked when what was it last season with Snake being in the game. They had the tactical EMPs, which made you cloak, which like you could still see the person who's cloaked, and while they were cloaked, they couldn't pull out a weapon without it like canceling the invisibility. And there's a little bit of like a animation lock where you couldn't just immediately come out of invisibility with a shotgun, dome someone, and go back. But this season, like, yeah, it just feels like situationally, like in last season, that never felt like it was the thing winning you the game. Versus now, if you're in these certain niche scenarios that we've described, you're going to just lose. And it's just a simply, you didn't find this thing, LOL, see you back in the lobby. It's like, I like the idea of the Icarus wings, but the fact that, so for all the mobility we've had in the last handful of seasons, like we saw like the Spider-Man web shooters, we had the grapple glove, which was basically a web shooter, just not Spider-Man. We had the ODM gear, which was really fun. That's probably my favorite one because it felt the most balanced, because like the offense on it wasn't insane, but like you had good mobility and it felt fun to use and whatnot. And then this season with the Wings of Icarus, it is the most punishing one to use while being the most cool. Like the idea of like, oh, you have wings on your back and you just take flight and start soaring around. You can like dive bomb and stuff. It's really cool until you realize about 1 to 2 bullets into the wingspan, not even hitting you, forces you into a downward spiral, bombing run where they can shoot you the entire time you're falling in your animation. There's nothing you can do. You can barely kind of turn one way or the other, which means odds are they're going to just have you dead by the time you hit the ground. So I'm not a fan of that either.
No, and like you said, having mobility is great, but when it can hinder you pretty badly if you're in a gunfight, it's not worth it.
Right. Yeah. You and I both understand the importance of, being able to maneuver, like especially stuff like Apex where positioning, kind of became key. You had people like, I liked running Valkyrie for the sole purpose of being a portable jump tower, that kind of deal. And, Fortnite's no different. And it does feel kind of bad to just, you try to use a mobility item. Like I would rather it be no offensive capabilities and actually work, it just, I don't know. It's a weird season. I know it just started not too long ago, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not sure if you feel like kind of in that same boat or what your thoughts are.
I don't know. I still haven't played enough to fully grasp how I'm feeling about the season. I'm not a big fan of the skins they have in the battle pass, so I don't know if I'm going to I don't think I'm going to buy it.
Right.
And from what I've been hearing about future collabs, there's not really any collabs that's making me, oh, I need to buy that skin right now. I'm probably only going to play it when some of our friends want to play it, but that's probably about it for me, unless they add something that really makes me say, oh yeah, this is getting played.
So for you, is it more of a collaborations would draw you back in, or is it like a gameplay change that needs to happen? What does Fortnite need to do, I guess, to get you back on board outside of just playing with friends?
Well, I would be lying if I said collaborations didn't play a huge part of it, because that's the only reason why I'll spend money on the game, is so I can run around as Master Chief or any hero that I like. Like I have Kratos. Well, I don't have Kratos, but there is Kratos. There's a Geralt from The Witcher. There's clone troopers.
Goku.
There's anime characters. There's just so many characters that it's crazy, and all I have spent money on. So I have a lot of collaborative skins, and there's maybe one or two I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't have bought that one. All the other ones I'm glad I did.
And it's fun to like have like it's kind of like this is like I mean the selling point of the like don't get me wrong when I said like the collaborations I wanted to kind of like die down a little bit, mainly just talking about in the past. I just kind of would rather them come to the shop, and whatnot, because that also means you don't have to work for them. You just dump V-Bucks into it and you get them. But like it is cool to be able to play with some of these characters in like what would basically be like what Metaverse is trying to do, but this is actually successful. Where like you can occupy these digital spaces using your avatar of whoever, pretty much whoever you want, as long as they're within the confines of Fortnite. But like you can just go to like digital experiences in Fortnite Creative as Cell from Dragon Ball or Snake from Metal Gear, stuff like that. And it is very cool. So I definitely see the appeal behind them doing more of them. I just would rather them come to the shop directly.
Instead of seeing in a battle pass.
Right. Because then it's like, well, because that becomes the thing of like, well, I have to get this level because I want that thing. Or kind of like how they've done it a couple seasons now, where like the bonus skin is the licensed one. I would rather just see that because if you really only wanted that character, you would just need to wait till those 8 challenges or whatever come out and then get those done, and then you'd have them for the cost of 950 V-Bucks.
Which isn't bad, considering most of the skins are
sure.
10 to 15 bucks already for one. And
Right.
if you at least get the battle pass, you can get a lot more.
Sure. Plus, claim your V-Bucks back and some other free ones.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think with that, I think this is where we're going to end it. This has been episode 8 of the Split Screen Experience. Thank you all. If you've still been listening to this part, we appreciate it. We really do. But as always, I'm your host, Harmon. Join alongside
Andrew.
We'll catch you next time. Peace.
See you, everybody.